It was such a shameful thing in those days. To be single and pregnant was, and then an unmarried mother in our kind of middle-class circle was just not the right thing. A social worker came into the room and said, just chatted for a little while, oh, what a lovely baby, can I hold him? So I handed Ian to her, and I never was allowed to hold him again. So it was a very numbing experience, and I can't really remember even crying. It was just unreal. It was as if it was happening to somebody else.
I was transracially adopted into a white family, and I grew up in the countryside. Obviously, my mum and dad who adopted me are my mum and dad and always will be my mum and dad. And at the same time, for my son, they're his granny and granddad. And I guess, yeah, they're the people who I love more than anything because they've brought me up.
In adoption, my day-to-day work is working with adults who want to adopt a child, feel that they have something to offer as adoptive parents. And my job is to walk them through the process of from knowing very little, potentially, about the needs of our children to being ready to have a child move in with them. So it's quite a privilege. Adoption joins two families together, a birth family and an adoptive family, for life, which isn't something that we think about at the beginning when we're looking at a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, but it's forever, and there's a forever link there, and that's what we're trying to prepare families for.
Initially, I never wanted to adopt. It was my husband that wanted to. And I was absolutely adamant this wasn't going to happen, but I went to the meetings, and it was quite a long process. It was about 6 months before we actually got a social worker, because we adopted a couple of years ago before the timescale was quicker. And as the process went along, the social worker did actually say to us, would you take siblings? And it was at that time that it was like a light bulb moment went off, and it's like, yes, we'll adopt.
We went to the foster carer's house and rang the doorbell, and it was a glass fronted door with one of those ones with wobbly glass, you know. And we could see this little shape charging towards the door and hear him sort of shouting. And he opened the door with this big smile on his face and then looked at us and ran like hell, because I think the reality of the situation suddenly hit him. And I think we probably felt like doing the same thing, but, you know, we had to keep a lid on it. And then we followed him after a while into the living room, and he was playing with some track, you know, cars and tracks. And just after a while, we just kind of got down onto his level, down onto the floor, and started tentatively playing. And he, as soon as he saw that we were willing to play, that's when it began. That was when the spark was lit.
For me, the love for my biological children was instant, and for my adopted child was slower to arrive. But I love them all very dearly now. And, you know, I think my feelings for my adopted son, it didn't start as love. It started as, oh, he's more handsome than the other children in this playgroup. And then it moved on to, you know, oh, I'm very proud of him when he makes that little tower. And then it moved on to quite a deep protectiveness of, you know, I'm not sure that this professional is meeting his needs quite as I would like them to be, and therefore I will go and advocate for him.
It doesn't matter how the child gets to you. You just know that, you know, you'll build a bond in your own way. And if it's going to work, it's going to work, basically. Yeah, we took the risk, and it's worked out perfectly. I mean, I was never that worried by the third child and going through adoption, because my two experiences with my other two were just fantastic.
I would have just hated the thought of losing a son and never having another one. That son and a daughter I've got now. And of course they didn't know they had a half-brother somewhere until my mum died. And sifting through all the stuff in my mum's home back in Norwich, I found an envelope of black and white photos that my dad had taken. My dad had long since died. I had no idea my mum would have kept those photos, and luckily the negatives as well. And one of the photos is behind me here on the shelf. And I just thought, I would hate to die and my children find out they've got a brother they don't know about. Or I would have hated either of my kids to have been there when I discovered this photo. So I made the decision to tell them about Ian. They were in their early teens, which was long before he actually contacted me.
I have a great relationship with my birth mum and I love her too, but it's almost like a friendship more than anything. I find it hard to understand when you hear stories of children who have been adopted and they find out when they're 12 or a bit older. I just think that's wrong. I think if you're adopted, you need to know. People need to be honest about it. I think that's the main thing for me, the honesty. I do think at the end of the day, the most important thing is for a child to have that loving family, and whatever colour family they're going into shouldn't really make any difference. As long as they've got that supportive, stable, loving family, that's the main thing.
There are always going to be children who need adoptive families because unfortunately there are always families who can't care for the children that are born into them. So I would ask people to hold on to the fact that loving and wanting to do it is a hugely important motivating factor, but we need more than that. And every single person will bring with them a unique set of skills and experiences that they can offer to being adoptive parents that will strengthen their ability to parent a child. And we want to know about those, we want to hear about them. That's what our job to do, is to sift through and walk through it with you and find out what you can offer and how we can work with you. It's we say love is not enough, and that sounds negative, but that's not it. We want people to bring with them their love and desire to parent, because that's such an incredible motivating factor, and it's so clear when people come with that. But we want to help strengthen them and bring knowledge and skills and experience into the mix so that family has the best chances of success. That's our job.
It's the absolute best thing that's ever happened to me and my husband. Gosh. Sorry.
I thought that us being a same-sex couple would go against us. We didn't know whether Jackie being Asian would go against us, because there aren't statistically as many Asian children available for adoption. I have multiple sclerosis, and we didn't know if that would go against us. You know, we're a bit of a mishmash of stuff. You name the box and we can probably put a tick in it. So I would say just not to worry about the skeletons in your closet. Go and talk to an agency and see what they say. Or now ring First for Adoption, which is what we would have done had we had that option at the time. Absolutely. To say to somebody who knows, look, this is my life, will I be considered? And probably you will, and probably you'll be great at it.
So I can't add anything to that.
The post came on Saturday morning, and there was just one letter, an airmail letter with a New Zealand postmark, New Zealand stamp. And I knew before I even opened the letter who it was from. The letter he first wrote me was arrived here in July. It wasn't until December that we decided it would be time to meet. My plane had been delayed for 5 hours. I can't remember why, actually, but he'd just sat there 5 hours after I was supposed to arrive and just came rushing to meet me, and we just stood and hugged for ages. Yeah, it was good. Despite my own experiences, and particularly Ian's experiences, I'm convinced that the majority of adoptions these days are done for the right reasons. So it's more important than ever that these children are actually taken from harm's way and placed in safe, loving homes that can give them the care, the quality of care that every child should be entitled to. And I'm very encouraged by today's practices, I have to say.
To know that we've taken that individual and given him a chance at having a good, fulfilling, stable, happy, secure life. If you waited until you were absolutely 100% sure that you wanted to do this before you started the process, you'd never do it. It's like birth parents who wait for the right time to become pregnant. There is no right time. There's never going to be a right time. But if you don't start and get the information and start the process, then you'll never start. So just put one foot on the pathway and see where it leads.